Okay, my name's Linda Chardiello and I'm here today to help inform members of the public who may be coming to this free public talk and know very little about the background of the NKT or Tibetan Buddhism in general, to inform them about some of the issues that will be hidden from them in this kind of talk, and to let them know of potential pitfalls and dangers of becoming involved in a group like the NKT. Because to begin with, I went to a talk something like this when I first came across the NKT, and I fell in love with the teachings and wanted more, and found myself studying more and more, and then ending up moving into one of the centres, giving up my job in order to work for the centre, expanding the centre, getting more people coming in, becoming an evangelist, if you like. And then at the centre that I helped set up in Windsor, there was a woman that was living there who was not fully committed to the NKT and was not working hard enough for the centre as far as they were concerned. And she was a friend of mine, and they threw her out. They said, you're not pulling your weight round here. Off you go. And she was not from England and was devastated. Didn't have anywhere to go. Didn't have any money. And I was upset about that. So I tried to stand up for her and say, you can't do this to this person. This isn't compassion. I said, would Avalokiteshvara do this to somebody? And they said, and I ended up having an argument with them about other things as well, that the woman that was in charge of the centre was bringing in changes, and when I questioned anything, I was always told, it's not for you to question anything, you must just do as you are told. This is coming from Geshe-la, it's Geshe-la's will. And I was like, well, how do I know that it's coming from Geshe-la? And even if it is coming from Geshe-la, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right. But I was told that you're not allowed to, have this kind of questioning negativity, they called it, that I was too negative. So I ended up having an argument with that woman who was the director of the centre, and she evicted me as well. So not only was this girl evicted, I was evicted, and I was one of the people that was set up the centre. I brought a lot of people in, and I was, one of the driving forces in the whole centre. But I wasn't banned from the NKT altogether. I went to move to the big centre in Yorkshire called Madamaka Centre. And it was only after I'd been there for a little while, and they gave me loads of jobs to do. I was in charge of the kitchen, I was in charge of the shop. And I was being given loads of practices that you get given these highest yoga tantra practices after you've only been there for sometimes just a couple of weeks. There's a summer festival. Oh yes, highest yoga tantra, take the empowerment. And I found that the reason why I wanted to get involved with the Buddhist teachings was I wanted to learn about how to have a peaceful mind. How to cultivate myself, to be a better person. But instead, I found that I was just being given loads of reciting to do all the time. Recite this prayer, recite that prayer, rituals this, rituals that, and it just had no meaning to me. And I just thought, this isn't what I came here for. And then I started to get a strong feeling that it was inauthentic. That you'd see a lot of this kind of glazed eyes in people, in the centre, where and I kept this phrase would come up in my mind, papering over the cracks, that they're just people who've got psychological issues, psychological wounding, if you like, from childhood or whatever, and all that stuff is, ignore that. That's not important. If you've got psychological problems, just practice taking and giving, and practice compassion, and that will all go away. Everything will be fine. But what ended up happening to me was really what was going on was the fostering of a kind of neurosis that a lot of people have, of like being a people pleaser or being like a martyr. the martyr complex, where you feel like, or if I just put all my own needs to one side and I'm just going to look after everyone else, that'll make me a better person and I'll be happy because of that. But you're not, you just become like a cracked, dried up human being who doesn't know anything about themselves, what they need, and what you need to be happy. So eventually it sort of came to a head for me where I had a bit of a tantrum one day at the centre because something had gone wrong in the kitchen that I was in charge of. And I got so upset about it, and I remember thinking, this is, I'm supposed to be getting a peaceful mind and able to deal with problems, and I'm just getting worse. This isn't helping me at all. And I began to feel that we were all just living there in this ivory tower, running away from the world, rather than practicing non-attachment. We were actually practicing avoidance of attachment, avoidance of the world, because we can't deal with it, And I told a monk one day, I've got a job, actually, I'm leaving, I'm going to go and work in social services, children and families, because I want to do something practical to help people. And they were like, I don't know how you could do something like that, I couldn't cope with a job like that,
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what's the point of all this if you can't actually put it into practice, And another example, I was giving a lift to a teacher one day to give a teaching somewhere, and there was a man, it was freezing cold winter night, man hitchhiking on the road. So I thought, compassionate thing to do, stop, give him a lift. So I stopped to give him a lift, and the teacher was really angry with me. What are you thinking of, stopping to give that man a lift? I'm going to give a teaching here. And I said, well, hang on a minute, we're supposed to be practicing compassion, aren't we? And he was like, well, what about the compassion for my students? I have to be, whatever, present this image, and it just started to feel fake to me. Fake. That's the word, inauthentic. So I started to pull away from the group. And the last time I went to visit the centre that I lived at was Majamaca Centre in Yorkshire. It was in 1996, and on that day, the scandal had broken about Neil Elliott, who was called Gen Tugten Gattu at the time. He was Geshe Khalsa's heart disciple, his chosen successor. The scandal had just broken that he'd been forced to disrobe for sexual misconduct. That apparently he'd been having sex with some nuns and various people. That's what the rumour was. And there was a bus there, and I said, what's the bus for? And they said, we're going to protest against the Dalai Lama. I said, you're doing what? Going to protest against the Dalai Lama? Are you out of your mind? And that was the end of it for me. I thought, I can't be involved in the group like this anymore at all. So I never went back again after that. And then as the longer I was on my own away from the group, and I started to look back on it, and I started thinking, hang on a minute, I was in a cult. And I hadn't really realised, obviously at the time, that it was a cult, but when I was looking at it, thinking, there's just one teacher, we're only allowed to read those books. If you criticise anything, you get into trouble for criticising it, and there's this, when new people come in, it's all, nice, smiley, nicey, but as soon as you become involved, then, deeper into the group, then the control starts on you. And I thought, wow, I never would have thought I would have fallen for that. Yeah. but I did. And but then it took another 10 years before I realised that I wasn't the only person who thought that. It was only really with the advent of the internet, Facebook, things like that I began to find out that I wasn't the only person who'd left thinking, hang on a minute, that's a cult. Well, I think that, as I said, there is a big problem, as far as I think is concerned, with the way that they teach highest yoga tantra practice to psychologically and spiritually mature people. Because the thing about it is you end up verging on mental illness with it, because you get this dissociation. You start to, because you're taught, you dissolve your personality, and now you manifest yourself as the deity, So people go and think, I am Tara, or I am Vajrayogini, or I am, and instead of developing divine pride, which is what we're told we're supposed to be developing divine pride, they're just developing pride. not divine pride, it's just ego. And you see in the names of a lot of these people who post on Facebook and on the internet, they call themselves things like lineage holder, wisdom leader, and they seem to have very sort of high opinions of themselves, and the way they preach at you, what the way the language they use of like they're somehow got this high realization, and you're just sort of an inferior being who they need to, teach how to be a proper Buddhist to, and it just all seems so fake, they it doesn't sound like it's coming from any genuine love or compassion. They talk about themselves having, we do this protesting against the Dalai Lama because we have out of love and compassion, and all that sounds like to me is people who have got no knowledge of themselves and their own feelings and their own state of mind. They're completely, a lot of them are just completely dissociated from their feelings and from who they really are. They're trying to superimpose onto this sort of cesspit of unresolved psychological rubbish, and they're trying to pretend that they're something that they're not. And the trouble is, of course, when it all falls apart, like for a lot of people, I think for me as well, I remember thinking, oh yes, I am Tara, when I was doing, but it's rubbish, I'm not Tara, it's just ridiculous, and you start to feel that you've got this sort of superhuman something or other that you can withstand anything, but really, you're as fragile as the next person, and you're heading for a fall. And I did have a big fall. It didn't happen immediately, but after a few years, I sort of came crashing to earth and realised that I was just like a spiritual baby. I didn't really know anything, and all the practices that I'd been doing hadn't really helped me at all, really. I think that Buddhism has a lot of value. The teachings do have a lot of value, but there's a big danger in what has been called this habit of spiritual bypassing, where people are using spiritual practice to actually avoid addressing their own issues and avoiding. Like with anger, for example, people say, it's wrong to get angry, and we've got to transform our anger into compassion or whatever. But what's happening a lot of the time is people aren't transforming their anger into compassion. They're just pushing it down. And they're pretending to themselves and to everyone else that they're a better person, but really they're just getting all knotted up. I don't know. Spiritual bypassing is the danger, I think, and there's been quite a lot written about that as a thing that goes on a lot in spiritual circles, which is why a lot of people that supposedly claim to be spiritual, on the surface they seem like nice, kind people, but scratch a little bit deeper and they're not really any nicer or kinder than anyone who's not spiritual, who doesn't claim to be spiritual. They're just an ordinary person, just like anybody else. So obviously the teachings of trying to be kind to each other is basically that's all we need, really. Just try and be kind to each other and try and be kind to yourself. I think that's the thing that's ignored a lot in Buddhism is the need to be kind to yourself, because unless you can take care of yourself, you can't really take care of anybody else.